Hi, my name is Carl Dortelman, and this is my first video doing a new series about ball pythons. I've recently started a business called Kaos Balls, which is going to be all about high-end ball python morphs. Alright, our first featured snake is a piebald fire pastel, known in the trade as a firefly piebald or firefly pied. This one is very high white. Most firefly pieds tend to be high white, although not all of them. You can see the yellow and a very, very nice head stamp. That pattern. All right, now we have one I call the Kraken because she's huge. She's only 3 years old. It's hard to believe. She's already had one clutch of eggs. This is a het piebald, meaning that she has one of the piebald genes that requires two in order to show the piebald. So you can't see it. She's massive. I can't even fit her all in this camera. She is just humongous, especially considering she's 3 years old. She is probably going to grow up to be one of the biggest ball pythons around, and definitely the biggest one I have ever handled, considering in 10 more years, who knows, they grow for life very slow. This one is a super pastel piebald, otherwise known as the killer pied, meaning it has two piebald genes and two pastel genes. He is very low white piebald. When most people think of a piebald, they think mostly white snake with some spots here and there, maybe a head stamp, but he has mostly color. Here we have one of my favorites, definitely my wife's favorite ball python. This is a piebald. Lighting's kind of weird this late afternoon, so you see kind of a glare, but that's those white spots. She's also a high color, low white piebald because she doesn't have a lot of white. She has mostly color, which I prefer. I like the color. I don't really like all white snakes, although I have one. She's got these funny faces in her. People call these pumpkins or happy faces. And my favorite thing about her that she has, different than most piebalds, is this peach coloring. They're usually quite colorful when they're babies, but once they get to be her age, they tend to brown out. She has very high peach colors, edges on all of her spots. She's got some very interesting, chaotic, long head neck stripe, very interesting patterns. She's very large. She's also 3 years old. This is her first season that she's been bred to my super pastel piebald, and I'm hoping to get a whole clutch of pastel piebalds. This wonderful snake is a orange dream pinstripe. The orange is kind of faded out a little, so she just looks like a pinstripe in this lighting. She does have orange sides, which are hard to see. She's a bit skittish. So you can see the orange side. And the pinstriping is slightly reduced from the orange stream gene. She's a big girl. This is a bamboo morph. This is my favorite single gene morph, meaning that without adding any other genes to it, just all by itself, just a bamboo, is so amazing looking. It looks like some freaky combo of mutated genetics. So beautiful. Look at that color and patterning. He's a pretty big one. This is a bamboo disco. The disco is a brightener gene. You can see it almost makes her spots on her back, especially her tail, almost glow. It really lightens her up. Look at that. So bright. She's young. She's still a little skittish, but she's starting to be better at being handled. She's kind of calm now. She's getting used to me. You can tame snakes, sort of. They're not like mammals where they're gonna hang out with you and play catch, but they're gonna get tame as far as get comfortable around humans, where they're not too skittish. At first, they're like wild animals, and they just see you as a giant predator that might potentially eat them. So they run or strike or ball up. But she's starting to become... Whoops, see there, she's balling up. Their head's very vulnerable. My hand got too close to her head, and she's still a baby. She's still not really used to me. So she stuck her head in the middle. That's why they call them ball pythons. Their body's very muscular, very thick and heavy, but their head is very small and just a little bony skull, so they hide it very well. Oh, now she's coming back out to say hello. You can see their eyes, her forked tongue. She's smelling the world. There she is. She's got blue eyes. Here's a really cool, kind of a mystery snake. He's bred by Matt Lehrer, the discoverer of the GHI gene. He has GHI reptiles, and bought it from him. He sold it to me really at a deal for some reason. I suspect partly because he couldn't even identify exactly what the snake is, even though he bred it. It was from a two-sired clutch. The potential genes for this snake are pastel or super pastel, lemonback, which is another brightener gene, GHI or super GHI, and lesser. Oh yeah, there was another one, was het red xanthic. I think this snake got everything from that combo except for the super pastel or the het red xanthic. So my best guess is it's a super GHI, lesser pastel lemonback. Or it could be, I suppose, just a super GHI, lesser lemonback, or just a pastel. It's really hard to tell, which is why he said he could not really identify it. It looks a lot like super GHI lessers I've seen. Of course, there's not very many out there. Very few examples on the internet, but look at how pale and white his stripes are. Even his browns are very pale, more than a regular super GHI lesser. So that's why I suspect there's pastel and or lemonback in there. This is a leopard pastel. You can see why they call them a leopard morph. This mutation makes them really have these cool kind of leopard or cheetah spots. And the pastel gives her a little bit more of a yellow, which makes her even look more like a big cat. And she's got very pretty eyes. Hard to tell in this lighting. Kind of pale blue, maybe a little bit of green. Get a good shot of this one. This is a cinnamon. She's also heterozygous for ghost, which is a recessive gene. So she didn't need to have two ghost genes in order to be visual. She's only like one. So she has the potential, kind of like some people don't have blonde hair, but they do carry a blonde hair gene. So if they reproduce with a blonde, they can have the potential to have blonde children. Ghost would make her all faded out, but she doesn't have that. She just has the typical little eyelets. Cinnamon morph, and that dark cinnamon black with brown patterning. She's a big one. This is where I keep the really big female ball python. These big giant pyramid things right now, sleeping. If they need to cool off, they come over to the small side, a big water bowl. Some nice cypress mulch to hang out in. These are large for ball pythons. These are considered very large. They're 4 foot long neodeshes. Ball pythons, of course, like to stay in really small spaces in nature they live in tiny holes in the ground and wait around all day, like ambush hunters. And even at night they come out a little, but they like to stay hidden in little holes. Also because they are small snakes relatively, and they make a great meal for a lot of animals, and they are not really good at defending themselves. They have little tiny teeth. You know, they can constrict rats, but that doesn't really help them against a large predator. So despite people's fear of snakes, ball pythons are mostly just really scared, so they like to hide. So most people keep them in a rack. These are where the smaller snakes are kept. They're kept in this rack with some tubs so they can hide in the dark, humidity, substrate, water bowls. When I first got into ball pythons, I didn't understand this. A lot of people might think, oh, that's cruel keeping them in this little box, but they love it. They eat better. They have nice sheds in those humid boxes. You can keep them nice and warm. They love the security. Predators can't get them, and they know it. They love being in a little dark box where nobody can attack them and eat them. That's just their instincts. And then of course it's controlled by heat tape for their hot spot. And we have a Herpstat sophisticated thermostat set to keep them nice and warm, but not too hot. Too hot's very bad, just as it's too cold is very bad for reptiles. They're cold-blooded and they cannot regulate their own body temperature like we can.